With a smug grin and a mocking gaze, she points at him, pleading and begging him to go on and throw one of his usual fits. And honestly, she can't stand the thought that he's her childhood friend. And it was in that moment that something deep within him shifted, that something in the depths of his soul snapped. Takayashiki Rua is not your average girl. She's one of the hottest idols at the moment, while also being the granddaughter of Takayashiki Taizo, the chairman of the Teiken Group, Japan's ruling corporate giant, making her wealth and influence far beyond any normal person. In other words, she was a real-life princess in action. On the other hand, our main protagonist Suzuki Kazuma is just a run-of-the-mill guy. He's gloomy and plain with no friends to his name, but most importantly, bro is maidenless. He's who we'd call a loner, sitting at the very bottom of the social food chain. His only defining trait and achievement in life is being able to call himself the childhood friend of Rua. Believe it or not, he spent his whole life as Rua's shadow, like he was Igris or something. But that's never been his desire. He doesn't want to be special like Rua. All he ever wanted was something simple, a real connection, friends, a girlfriend and a normal life. But he didn't just come to this conclusion suddenly, as he actually tried to express those feelings to her. But it took a turn for the worse. With venom dripping from her voice, she asked if he was stupid, that he should know his place like the worthless, gloomy loser that he is, as his only worth in life is being her childhood friend. Nothing more and nothing less. That role alone used up all his life points, and he should get it through that tough skull of his, as her words ring through his ear that he should know his place. The words that she repeated to him all these years, they weighed on him like a burdening curse. But even then, he couldn't help but long for a normal life. It was then, in the spring of his first year in high school, that he sat by his desk at home, shortly after receiving a text message from Rua herself, requesting that he meets her at the station the next day at 3 p.m. since Aya and some other friends had planned to go to karaoke, asking if he wanted to go. He figured that this Aya person must have been Hiragi Ayaka, the flashy girl from school who oddly enough he never spoke to. Confused, he wondered why him of all persons, and as if she were answering his thoughts, mentioned something he had said in relations to wanting friends, but most importantly, a girlfriend, further encouraging him that the best way to do that would be to join an elite group like theirs, encouraging him to take the first step. As his eyes glistened at the opportunity, he thought that this would finally be his chance to change, and he desperately wanted to. He dressed up the best he could and even went to the barber to get that sweet fade. It was finally the moment of truth, and right as he pulled the handle of the door, he thought to himself that to become a new him, in order to finally change. The room burst into laughter as they taunted him for actually showing up. How gross it was. They even mocked my boy's fade, mentioning how he smells like he just got out of the hair salon. Plus they're clowning his fresh new jacket. All while Rua laughed the loudest, mockingly asking them to stop as he really did try his best. Yet Aya, her friend, sat quietly unamused. Kazuma stands in silence, not a single word left his mouth, and as he drowns the sounds of all the laughter in the background, he realized that it was all just a setup. Rua stands to her feet and asked him what was wrong, as he just seemed to be standing there awkwardly. She cheers him on, begging him to cry in front of everyone, as she had bet 10,000 yen that he would have. Ignoring her plea, he whispered under his breath, requesting that she answers just one question. If he had done something wrong, desperately desiring to know what exactly he had done to deserve this. And with that devilish smile of hers, she answered that it was obvious, simply because he was her slave, urging him to go on, struggle, to put on a good show for her. And then it happened. She finally admitted the truth, that this whole time she couldn't stand the thought of him being her childhood friend. Kazuma's eyes widened as it felt like something just broke. As if chains were being snapped, he could finally hear the sounds of a bond being shattered. It was the last straw for him, and with those dead and soulless eyes, he looked right through her, mentioning that he felt the same, that they should cut ties, and she couldn't believe what she just heard. Infuriated, she asked him what exactly he thought he was saying. A loser such as himself shouldn't even be talking back to her. But Kazuma was right, as she was the one complaining after all. She continued her onslaught once more that he shouldn't mess with her, as unlike him, she has every right to hate him. But Kazuma's done. He clenches his fist and with a sudden explosion of rage, he slams it through the table. And almost as if it were nothing to him, he turns around facing the door in front of him, finally mentioning that it was settled, and closes the door behind him. Standing in shock, Rua's entourage talk about how lame Kazuma was, and how she shouldn't worry about him. Meanwhile, her friend Aya made an astute observation, asking if bro really broke the table. And as they gathered, they were all met with denial and disbelief that a human could possibly do such a thing. All while Rua stands afar off, shook with rage, unable to grasp how it was a piece of her confidence could be shattered by someone like him. And while standing in place, she screams that she'll never forgive him for breaking off their friendship. All while Kazuma, on the other hand, thinks how refreshing that whole experience had been for him, as the world itself seems to be glowing. He wondered why he had always allowed her to control him this whole time, as he'd much rather face high school alone than sell his soul to a beast wearing human clothing. But deciding to move forward and no longer living in her shadow, Kazuma finally felt free. That same night, we get our first glimpse of the man pulling the strings behind the mighty Taikai group, Takayashiki Taizo, and with a stern demeanor he stares at the pages before him. But that all changes when Rua calls out to him from afar, and his whole mood lightens up. She goes on to mention how Kazuma has been mean to her today, as he threatened to break off their friendship. But her statement catches the attention of the beauty standing idly in the room. Rua's cousin Takayashiki Kikura turns in disbelief, asking if what she had said was true. Rua confirms her suspicion by reiterating that she couldn't believe it herself, as she never once thought Kazuma would oppose her until now. Still not convinced, however, her cousin Kikura mentions that maybe she had been the one to say something nasty, with Rua casually admitting to calling him her slave, and yeah, maybe she also said being his childhood friend was the worst. But they had already figured that that was what had happened, as it's only natural for him to be upset after being told that. But Rua doubles down, insisting she was only teasing him. Jealousy bubbles to the surface as she confesses that it's infuriating to her to see Kazuma trying to make friends and looking for a girlfriend, as the whole thought to her is ridiculous. But Kikura mentions that wanting more friends is actually pretty normal, but denying it all, Rua screams at the top of her lungs that it's not. After all, Kazuma always had her. The world's cutest Rua is always by his side, yet just the thought of him wanting to get close to another girl is unbelievable. And because of that, she believes it's only natural that she'd want to tease him about it. As in the whole world, she's the only one who understands him the most. Because get this, she loves him. And that's all Gramps needed to hear to switch sides, as he claims that it's indeed Kazuma's fault. But Kikura seemed to have been the only one convinced Rua was wrong and nudged her to apologize. But she stubbornly rebuts that since her cousin was once Kazuma's mentor, she could figure something out and make things right by having him apologize and confess that he loves her. And while he's at it, to add a kiss as well. Kikura couldn't believe how down bad she was and directed her focus towards her uncle, asking if he had intended for Kazuma to marry Rua, with him confirming that he did, since that's exactly the reason he had her teach him martial arts, as well as the arts of leadership. Plus, Rua had liked him, and a talent such as himself was one of a kind. Gazing towards her fan, Kikura agreed, claiming that she's never seen anyone like him before, as ever since he was in elementary school, his grades have always been straight 3s graded out of 5, purposely scoring a little over average in order to fit in, as all of this was done as part of his training to become Rua's shadow. But if he were to ever stop and choose to aim higher, then not just the whole school or country would be shaken, but rather the whole world. And if our boy wasn't suffering from success already, well, turns out he was always popular with the girls, as she's not even able to count just how many had been transferred out because they liked him. And as a result of that, he never realized just how popular he was. Hearing this, Rua stands proud as she claims that that's her Kazuma after all, while Chairman Takayashiki mentions that that's why he's a worthy candidate to take over his company. But Kikara saw much further, since now that he's cut ties with Rua, he no longer needs to hold himself back, and she couldn't help but wait for the moment when everything would spiral out of control. And it started the very next day. The halls of the Teikai Academy buzzed with tension, and right in the center of the corridor sat a single desk and chair that belonged to Kazuma. The message was loud and clear. He went against Rua, and this was his punishment. Of course, the ultra-rich Harris would stoop this low, just to prove how much of a cruel, spoiled human being she really was. Still, he didn't let it shake him. Instead, he calmly weighed his options. Option 1 was to drag the desk back to class and endure the ridicule. Or option 2, complain to the staff. But it wouldn't have been worth it since the school literally belongs to her grandfather, chairman of the Teikai group. You see, this isn't just any academy. This is Teikai Academy, a school that cultivates S-class talent, where elite students from across the nations are recruited under a scholarship program to become the best in sports, arts, and academics, you name it. If you excel, you don't pay a single yen. But make no mistake, because this place runs on a hierarchy, a real-life castle system, complete with upper and lower ranks. And sitting at the very top of the throne, Rua, the self-proclaimed princess herself. So yeah, option 2 was out the window. Instead, Kazuma does something no one expected. He grabs his pen and quickly scribbles a quick message on the paper taped on the chair. He stated that he'll be studying on his own, and since it was a direct message from Princess Rua herself, then they should please count him as present. Surprised by his 200 IQ play, the other students stood in shock as Kazuma decides to head to another location, but also thought about how troublesome it would be if others found out about it. And upon his arrival, he reveals that it's an underground library that only he and a few others know about, as most students and some teachers are unaware that it even exists. But since he's a regular, the senior of the library committee lets him in sometimes. As he walks down the stairs towards the door, he thought about how he just killed time until classes were finished, thinking how he'd always wanted to live a normal life. But now that he's gone against Rua, he doesn't think he'll be able to make many friends or having a girlfriend for that matter. And as he grips the door handle, he wishes to now live quietly on his own, and opening the door before him, all he saw were yams. And it's in that moment that Kazuma had no idea about the story that was about to be unfolded right before him, as his goal of seeking an ordinary life was now filled with extraordinary girls, and his days were now far from peaceful. With a million eyes watching, a single girl stirred up chaos. The evil and conniving Rua began her live stream on a channel with over 1,091,000 subscribers. Damn! And today she's here to vent about someone who seriously ticked her off recently, since just the other day she went out for karaoke with a few girls from her class. Apparently, someone in Rua's karaoke group decided to kill the vibe mid-session and just left. Halfway through, I know, tragic. Rua leans in close to address her legions of subscribers, whom she affectionately calls her loyal subjects, telling them to listen up, since if the party's poppin', they should never be the odd one out to wreck it. Oh, and lastly, she has some huge news, announcing a brand new gig, and she's teaming up with a new voice actress named Minato Amane. They're not only working at the same agency, they also happen to attend the same school. Their debut CD is dropping soon, and the first live event is scheduled for next Sunday at the Shine Mall. And with that, Rua signs off as thousands flood the comments with admiration and support. But back to the present, Kazuma, now awkwardly standing in front of a door he shouldn't have opened, lowers his gaze and apologizes for intruding earlier. The young lady inside, clearly startled moments ago, bows her head slightly, introducing herself as Amane Minato while also apologizing for raising her voice so much. But our boy, feeling guilty for barging in, admits that he should have knocked, asking if she too had heard about the secret spot from the head of the library committee. When she had answered yes, he figured he wasn't the only one and decided to wait outside, giving Amane the opportunity to change. A few minutes later, Amane opens the door and gently invites him back in, still apologizing for the wait. But Kazuma can't help but ask the question that's burning on his mind. Why was she changing in there, and why in her gym clothes no less? Amane explains that she was just looking for a quiet spot to rehearse her singing and dancing. And as it turns out, she's a voice actress preparing for a big upcoming event. That's when the realization hits him that she's from the entertainment world, just like Rua, another elite handpicked by the academy. He glances around and notices a oversized mirror Amane brought with her, clear evidence of her dedication. But it also made him curious because why wasn't she in class? Amane's eyes drop since this morning when she arrived at school, she found her desk and chair in the hallway, accompanied by a sign that read, "No seat for you." Kazuma freezes. He's heard this before. The setup, the humiliation, and suddenly her teary eyes from earlier makes perfect sense. Just then his phone buzzed with a new message. No, multiple messages. All from Rua. She's demanding to know where he is. Worse yet, she's asking if he saw her newest video. She might just reveal his name in her next live stream and let her fans hunt him down. Unless, of course, he brings his pathetic little desk back into class and beg. And just from the look in his eyes, you could just tell he was disgusted. Kazuma turned his attention back to Amane, but still puzzled. Since if she was really one of Teikai's special scholarship students, then why was she going through all this effort? But even though Amane is a voice actress, she's far from popular. And according to her, she knows exactly why. It's her face and her voice. But you already know my boy couldn't let her talk like that. He had to dig deep in his wrist bag. Mentioning that he isn't able to see her face properly because of all her bangs, but he thinks her voice is pretty cute. And just look at her. Look at her face, bro. He got her out here blushing. But to her, it's absolutely not true. Since there are a ton of other people out there with better voices, and compared to Rua Takayashiki, she's nothing. But even so, someone like her ended up forming a unit with Rua, which might just explain the harassment she's been getting lately. During Rua's livestream yesterday, Amane got hit with a flood of comments, stuff like, if Rua teams up with someone like that, then her reputation's doomed. Harsh words from Rua's fans, but hey, pigs do attract pigs. But it begs the question, why is she even deciding to team up with that pig anyway? And she couldn't believe what she just heard, warning him that he can't just be calling her that. Since if someone heard him bad-mouthing Rua at school, it would be bad news. But since it's just the two of them, bro's allowing his intrusive thoughts to run wild. Amane confesses that it wasn't her decision to make in the first place, but rather the agency. Since she's seen as plain and gloomy, they thought she'd make the perfect supporting role behind Rua's spotlight. Cruel, yeah, but that's just Teikai music for you. They do anything to push Rua, and my god, bro, how many company do these people own? Kazuma doesn't doubt that the whole desk and chair situation was Rua's idea, and even though it was the agency's plan to pair the two, Rua probably can't stand the thought of being paired with someone beneath her. And before he could even complete his thought, she stopped him. She's okay with being her background support since it's a rare chance she's been given. So at the very least, she doesn't want to drag anyone down, but instead give it everything she has. And her words absolutely moved my boy to his core. He asked if that was her reason for coming to the library to practice, and when she had given a resounding yes, he couldn't help but smile to himself, admiring how cool she seemed to him. And with that, he mentions how he'd like to keep her company. Though, to be completely honest, all he really can do is give feedback from the perspective of a complete amateur, and asked if it were okay with her. Before he could even finish, Amane's eyes lit up. She gently took his hand and smiled as from now on, she's counting on him. And for a moment, just seeing her close up like this, Kazuma realized something. This girl is way cuter than that pig Rua could ever hope to be. Time flew by, and before they knew it, it was already lunchtime. And Amane had been practicing non-stop since morning. Kazuma started to worry she might be dehydrated, when suddenly from down the hallway an obnoxious voice yells his name, and right behind him was none other than the witch herself, Rua, as she asked where the hell has he been this whole time. And you could just tell, look at him, bro doesn't want to be here right now. Her verbal barrage kept going as she pressed Kazuma, asking why he was ignoring her. She even noticed that he blocked her on Messenger, but then delusionally thought to herself that maybe he isn't able to look directly at her because of how beautiful she was. But bro walked right past them like my dad walking out my life. And that's when dude grabbed his shoulder, asking what the hell was up with his silent treatment. And all it took was one look for Kazuma to break down this man's whole character profile like he was Batman or something. Because of that, we now know this dude's name is Asano, and he's the baseball club's promising scholarship student. As well as how bro must be some bum to be hanging around Rua instead of practicing. Hell, he should take a page out Amane's book. But looking at him too long had bro's blood boiling, especially since he wasn't saying anything. And so he pulled back his fist, ready to swing, and god damn! I ain't know bro had ultra instinct. He had Asano wondering if he was punching air, but Kazuma was finna lay it on him thick. He was staring death itself in the eyes, but he was too baffled because when did he get behind him? And now he's looking like a clown because he missed. They wondering if he weak or something. And hell, Kazuma wanted to have some fun too, asking bro if he's out of shape or something. And just as he was about to try again, Rua stopped him right in his tracks, since the only one allowed to seriously mess with Kazuma is her, and they only get a chance to if she gives them permission. Otherwise, no one should be laying a finger on him, and he should know his place. And just like that, the whole corridor went silent. Kazuma finally looked at her for the first time in their entire exchange, and you could just tell she's been waiting on this all day. But instead of reacting how she hoped, he called her out, asking if she really thought she did something cool just now, but instead decided to set things straight himself by declaring that absolutely no one was allowed to mess with him. Since he doesn't care who they are, he just wants them to leave him alone. Rua fell to her knees, eyes shimmering, heart pounding. She was gone. That line, that confidence, it hit her like a cupid with a bazooka. To her, Kazuma had never looked cooler. A whole week has passed and best girl Amane seems to be hard at work. But mid-practice, she spun too fast and nearly collapsed. That's when Kazuma swooped in, catching her just before she hit the floor. She apologizes since she keeps falling each time, but he reassures her not to worry about it, since he wouldn't want her getting hurt before the real thing. Starstruck, Amane couldn't help but think how amazing Kazuma was. He could be all the way across the room, but as soon as she trips, he's right there to catch her, but bro's just trying to play it off like he's not real life Bruce Wayne. But to her, it's not true, because ever since that day, he's been watching over her and encouraging her, not realizing how much it had helped her. And once again, she just wanted to thank him. And you could just tell from his expression, no one's ever said something like that to him before. But yet again, he tries to deny it. And almost as if nothing had happened, he turned his focus to her performance. Since wouldn't it be best to just walk back to center stage instead of doing a spin? As she always seems to lose her balance when she does. But to her, it just wouldn't look the best that way. So instead, Kazuma recommends jumping back in one move. Since if she used the strength in her knees, then she'll of course be able to casually flip in the freaking air. Like, is bro using backflips to get the huzz now? Like, what are you doing talking about C like this, bro? You better sit down. And of course something like this is impossible for her, but most importantly, what the heck was that? And she's right, normal people can't do that. Also, bro's grades must be off the charts, but nah. Because ever since he was in elementary school, he's only scored above average. But changing the topic once more, Kazuma thought about how her posture seemed a bit off. But no matter how hard she tries, she's never been able to fix her slouch. And as usual, bro's putting that brain of his to good use, mentioning that maybe she should take advantage of that slouch of hers, mimicking something cute like a purring cat. And she just went along with it, giving him all the right poses and angles, and he can hardly handle all that cuteness. And it seems that somehow, it's finally clicking for her. Kazuma recommends having her designer make cat ears and tail to go along with her outfit, and she was fully on board until she wasn't, as she wouldn't be able to use it for her performance with Rua, since it just wouldn't match well, along with the fact that she's supposed to be a background support. Kazuma took a moment before asking if that was really okay with her. But since her singing and dancing isn't necessarily her specialty, she'd actually prefer he watch her practice acting instead. After all, she is a voice actor. She desires to perform as an anime character, and that's why she's giving it her all now, hoping that it'll lead to other opportunities one day. And Kazuma couldn't help but think how positive she was, especially when she speaks about voice acting. She seems so full of life. He confesses how he felt envious, as he doesn't seem to have any dreams or goals to aspire towards. When she asked if there wasn't anything he wanted to become, the only thing that came to his mind was that he wanted to be ordinary. A life that he could be proud to proclaim that this was who he was. And even then she believed in him, since if it was him, she had no doubt that he could attain the very thing he wanted. And that's all he needed to hear as he smiles in appreciation for her kind words. Feeling a lot closer to him, Amane took the opportunity to ask a more personal question. Since the other day, well, she heard that he had gotten into a fight with Rua and thought that maybe it was because of her. He reassures her that that wasn't the case, but being persistent, she mentions how they were childhood friends and how she must be putting him in a tough spot. But he doesn't consider her a childhood friend anymore, and that's all she needed to hear. She steels herself to make a confession. She stutters at first, but proceeds to ask if maybe he'd like to... And the witch herself appeared on the scene, asking what the hell were the two of them doing in such a cramped space, as she gets ready to unleash her attack. All hell breaks loose as Rua bursts into the secret library. She'd heard Kazuma was here, but she hadn't expected him to be with someone. She asked why the hell was he with this trash voice actress in the first place, as she's nowhere close to being as popular as she is. And just like that, the insults started flying, calling Amane literal crap and stupid. Rua finally pieces it all together. This is why Kazuma's been slipping away after school. It's all because he's been meeting up with some girl. And just the thought of it was enough to bring her to tears. But who's gonna tell her we don't care? She's not letting it go though, because Kazuma should be beside her instead. Amane, trying to de-escalate, puts all the blame on herself, saying Kazuma was just helping her out. But the moment she says his first name, Rua's ears twitched. She storms over, grabs Amane by the collar, and pulls her close. Because who the hell gave her permission to call him by his first name? Instead, she orders her to know her place and call him Suzuki instead. As getting close to Kazuma? Well, to her, she's a million years too soon. She even went as far as to bet that beneath those bangs of hers, she'd be ugly. But boy, was she wrong. Like, look at them eyes, bro. It's almost as if someone had gut punched her. She asked if she had shown Kazuma that cute face beneath her bangs, and immediately pulled out duct tape out of God knows where to slap those bangs back into place. But having enough, Kazuma called out to her, demanding that she cut it out. Since aren't the two of them supposed to be a part of some group? And though he might be right, Rua thinks she's just a supporting role anyway, so she can treat her however she wants. But Kazuma wasn't having it. That so-called sidekick of hers has been training every single day just to hold her own against Rua, so she shouldn't get in her way. But his actions only confuses Rua, since why was he taking Amane's side and they're clearly childhood friends? Kazuma thinks differently as he stands by those who work hard. He had to let her know again that they're not childhood friends. Bro, is you deaf? And she could just feel this man's bloodlust seeping through his skin. She struggles to get her words out at first, asking if he was still mad about the other day, as what she said was just a joke. And bro was confused. A joke? She low-key traumatized our boy. And how many people has she hurt with her so-called jokes? She's in high school, man. She needs to grow up and know the difference between what's okay and what's not. Like, she's the one who needs to know her place. And his words had her shaking in her boots. And without waiting for a response, Kazuma turns, walking right past her, signaling to Amane that they should leave. But turning to face him, she declares that she's way cuter than Amane, and there's no way she'd lose to some trash tier voice actress like her. And before she knew it, they were already out the door. While outside, Amane lowers her gaze, apologizing, thinking it might have been her fault why Rua got upset. But Kazuma reassures her that she doesn't need to apologize, since it just gave him a perfect idea, as they might be able to throw Rua off if they poke at her oversized pride. He's calling it the Iman Yan dance operation. After a bit of browsing at a nearby convenience store, Kazuma handed Amane a cute black cat earpin and asked if she had a YouTube channel by any chance, requesting that she wears it and uploads her most recent cat dance, as he sure will catch people's attention. But Amane, just like me bro, she barely got any subscribers and doubts her video would get any attention. Kazuma puts her mind at ease since he has a plan to help with that. His only request is that she trust him. His confidence was enough to calm her nerves. And after a brief pause, she nodded, but Kazuma wasn't done. He asked if she'd be okay with lifting her bangs when she recorded the video, as she's seriously cute, but just the thought of other people looking at her face makes her anxious, and hiding behind her bangs help her to relax. Curious, Kazuma asked if her agency ever mentioned anything about it, but it also makes sense why they wouldn't, since her appearance suits the support role image they were going for. Kazuma, piecing things together, think that was probably their plan all along. They should have gone solo from the start, but as it turns out, that is the plan. After the upcoming event, the group is disbanding. Amane said it like it was no big deal, but Kazuma couldn't hide his disgust, thinking how showbiz must be dirty, while Amane thinks it's only natural since the agency is owned by Rua's grandfather, so of course they'd favor Rua more. Plus, when it comes on to popularity and beauty, she thinks Rua's way out her league, and because of that, she wonders if going up against someone with power and status as Rua, if it was really okay. Hearing that, Kazuma finally understood. Her lack of confidence wasn't some character flaw. It was because of her environment, nurtured by an industry that hammers down anyone that stands out too much. Whether it was school or showbiz, Amane had always been surrounded by people too afraid to lose their position. People who tear down others just to be standing out. No wonder Amane's confidence is so low. Calling out to him using his last name, Amane asked if he were childhood friends with Rua, and how she seemed to like him a lot, but to Kazuma it's just annoying at this point. But also he wanted to let her know that it was okay for her to call him Kazuma instead. Amane lit up, glowing with excitement. She mentions that it would make her really happy if he called her Amane as well. And look here bro, he did it effortlessly. And yo, why are you blushing? You just told him he could call you that. And with her newfound determination, she looked up, mentioning that she'll do her best for the video shoot coming up. And before anyone could blink, the video was live. A bright chirpy Amane introduces herself as the voice actress performing the Amanyan dance on a channel with 41 subscribers. Then she danced, and not just any dance. We're talking backflips bro, probably the same move Kazuma taught her last chapter. At the end, a little breathless Amane returned to the camera, as she will be performing live this Sunday, and if anyone watching was free, they could stop by. She also made sure to ask everyone watching to subscribe. Makes me feel like I should be telling y'all to subscribe more, but hey. Watching from his phone, Kazuma couldn't help but think how cute her whole performance was. Yet he did notice she got a few hate comments from Rua's fans, but among them were some real viewers. He decided to check Rua's channel in the moment, not because he was into her, but solely for gathering information. And this girl is crashing out, calling every name known to man except for Kazuma's real name, which makes her threat last chapter about having her fans hunt him down just a bluff. But since then, she's actually been able to grow to 1.1 million subscribers, but continues to lose her mind over Kazuma not noticing how amazing she is. But with that, she brings her crash out session to a close, revealing that fake warm and bubbly character that she displays online, claiming that what we just saw was emotional expression acting, as she was just channeling some of her recent frustration, thinking that maybe she too should get into acting. And with that, she signs off, leaving Kazuma to wonder what the hell did he just watch? But even then, he's more determined than ever, since if that's how she wants to play, then he'll crush her without holding back. Unfortunately for them, Rua's video racked up over 20,000 views in just 3 hours, while Amane on the other hand is only sitting at around 52 views in 2 hours. Still, the cuteness from Amane's video was really good in his opinion, which means all that's left is for people to see it, and Kazuma knew exactly how he was about to help her out. You see, before you lies the introvert Kazuma Suzuki, and though he's still gloomy and plain with no friends to his name, online it's a little bit different. Since in a certain mobile game that he plays, he's actually the vice leader of a pretty big clan, and all it took were a few days for Amane's video to hit over 500,000 views. She's surprised since it's only been 3 days, wondering what exactly did Kazuma do during that time. But for him, he claims he only helped spread the word around a little. But most importantly, if the video wasn't great, then it just wouldn't have gone viral. So it's really all thanks to Amane's hard work and talent that got her here. And just hearing that made her really happy. She even mentioned running into someone just then that told her that they were coming to her event. But Amane isn't the only one who's been promoting, since Rua has posters all over the place. But to Kazuma, all that's left is for Rua to take the bait. And boy did she latch onto his hook, because he reeled her right in. And of course, bro isn't at all surprised. Amane on the other hand seemed shocked that Rua's wearing cat ears. But getting straight to the point, Rua mentions that she saw their little video, but she's convinced that Amane has no chance of beating her, since this Sunday will be the cat ear showdown, letting everyone know exactly who's the cutest and most popular one around. But Kazuma already knew she'd go there. It was his plan last chapter after all, but he sees right through her. Just from the twitch at the corner of her lips, he knew she wasn't confident. And with everything in place, it was now time for Kazuma to unleash his attack. On the day of the event, Kazuma had made it early to show his support to Amane, but wondered why she was standing by another door when her dressing room was the other way. But apparently, Rua had instructed her manager to remove Amane, since she didn't want to breathe the same air as a nobody. So instead, she decided to camp out in a nearby storage room. But being optimistic, Kazuma thought that maybe this might be a good thing, since now they wouldn't be disturbed. He mentions that it would be showtime soon and encouraged her. He knows she's got this. He's been watching over her this entire time and he knows she's improved a lot. Not quite convinced though, Amane asked why he was willing to go so far for someone like her, since she's been wondering about it this whole time. But it seemed to be a lot simpler for Kazuma. He feels as if their school is suffocating, always favoring their scholarship students. He knows it happens everywhere, but the way the lower class students are treated is way too obvious. But if someone like Amane, who isn't a scholarship student, could shine, he really thinks it could open up a hole in the wall their school has built. But to be honest, it isn't his main reason, because ever since he saw how hard Amane was trying, he desperately wanted to cheer her on. And digging into his bag, he remembered that he wanted to give her a custom-made cat ear. He wanted to find something that would suit her and thought that maybe it would be best to just make it. Taking it in hand, she thanked him again, mentioning that it made her really happy, reassuring him that she'll do her best. But that's not exactly how it's supposed to be worn. And while placing his hand on her face, he moved her bangs to the side, while letting her know that this is how she should wear it. Smiling as he figured that it would look great on her, Amane's whole face turned red, unable to get a proper word out. But Kazuma remembers a time recently when he got invited out for karaoke and decided to go to the salon for a sweet fade. How he felt like a completely different person. That's how it normally goes in novels, but not for him, since they all just pointed and laughed. But she's different. Amane Minato is someone who can shine. She has big dreams and she's worked so hard, but was interrupted by someone knocking on the door, since she's up next. And so reaching out his hand, Kazuma urges her to go and steal every single last one of Rua's fans, and grabbing onto it, she rushes towards the door, prepared to make the performance of a lifetime. The event begins, and Rua steps forward to thank everyone for coming. Standing before the excited crowd is everyone's favorite idol, the princess herself. The audience buzzes with excitement, especially when they see Rua looking extra adorable with cat ears perched on her head. Today, she's here to debut her new unit, Princess Royale and the Happy Servant. But speaking of her happy servant, Rua realizes she's forgotten to introduce her partner, the one who'll actually be singing beside her today, Minato Amane. With a bright smile, Amane introduces herself and kindly asks the audience to support their new unit. Rua's eyes widen when she catches the murmurs rippling through the crowd. How cute they think Amane looks. She can't quite wrap her head around it. After all she did was push her bangs up a little. But none of that really matters, since when it comes on to singing and dancing, Rua believes she's clearly the superior idol. And if that's the case, it's time to get the show started with their first song, Cute Dreamers. As the music starts and the voices fill the arena, the whispers return. But this time, they're all about Amane. The crowd wonders who's this charming girl beside their princess, and has someone this cute ever been on TV before? Isn't Amane way cuter than Rua? Even her singing and dancing seem to outshine Rua too, and it's in that moment that Rua can feel it. She's starting to sweat from all this pressure. To Kazuma, watching from above the stage, Rua has already lost. She must have thought that opening with her singing and dancing would guarantee her victory. But while Rua was busy playing the idol, Amane was practicing day and night, refining her performance until she shone with a dazzling charm. By the time the curtain rose, the battle was already over. Blinded by jealousy of the lower class girl who'd gone viral with her cat ears, Rua foolishly stepped into Amane's world, playing by her rules, just like Kazuma had done once before. And now, Rua was about to feel the same crushing embarrassment he'd felt back then. Kazuma notices something unusual. men in black suits weaving through the audience towards the back of the stage. He slips away, cutting through the section marked no entry, determined to see what's going on. We cut to one of the suited men frustrated that he hasn't been able to reach any of his teammates. He's running out of time, especially since the song is almost over. He decides he'll have to drag Amane off the stage himself, but Kazuma isn't about to let that slide, asking who exactly did this guy think he was about to manhandle. The man, too focused on his mission, doesn't even notice his fallen comrades lying behind him. He wants to know exactly what happened, but Kazuma's the one who's asking the questions here. He quickly noticed that this man is a part of the Takayashiki's family's security, and if Amane didn't deliver as a supporting act, they'd been ordered to remove her immediately. Once Kazuma confirms this, he moves in an instant, too fast for the man's eye to follow, and with a single precise strike, the man crumbles to the floor, and it seems that their security has gotten sloppy lately. Wasting no time, he slips back towards the arena, relieved that at least for now, everything seems to have worked out. To Kazuma, this was Amane's big moment, the one she'd fought so hard for, and he absolutely refused to let anyone ruin it. But then it struck him that even if they did manage to drag her off stage, it wouldn't have mattered. Everyone here had already been moved by her voice. Amane was finally shining, and no one could stop her. Taking a deep breath, Kazuma cupped his hands and shouted that she could do it. The sound of his voice filled Amane with a burst of fresh confidence, but on the other hand, it completely threw Rua off. She took one wrong step and almost broke her goddamn ankles, and before she knew it, she crashed, hitting the stage face first. And just like that, the event people would soon call the fall of the idol Rua ended in Amane's victory. By the next day, every major entertainment outlet was reporting on Rua's spectacular performance, carefully skipping over both her fall and Amane's stunning debut. But that was typical of Teikai music, dirty tricks and damage control as usual. Still, in the age of social media, there was no stopping the truth. Rua's fall was going viral everywhere, and Amane's name was on everyone's lips. Amane was showered with praise from every direction, and for Kazuma, that was enough for him. Amane was finally getting the attention she deserved, which meant it would take a lot more effort for him to stay by her side. He knew for a fact that Rua was furious. The official news ignored her fall, but the clips and memes all over the internet didn't. Meanwhile, no one could ignore Amane anymore. At this rate, her star would only rise higher. And when it did, Kazuma knew his very existence would be an obstacle for Rua, the so-called ruler of the school. So for now, he decided he'd fade into the background, quietly watching Amane's success from afar. But just as he turned to leave, Amane's voice cut through the chatter. She weaved through the crowd until she finally caught up to him. She bows, greeting him good morning, but she wasn't done yet, because right after catching her breath, she asked if after school he'd help her with practicing again. Kazuma was confused since the event was already over, but Amane explained that she'd gotten a call for a new audition for a new anime. Another agency had reached out to her directly, and she thought about leaving Rua's agency to chase after her dream of becoming a voice actress. And this time, she wanted to practice with Kazuma by her side. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, Amane pressed a finger to his lips. She didn't want him to call her Amane anymore. From now on, she said softly, only he was allowed to call her Amenyan. The crowded hallway was filled with whispers, but before anyone else could react, Rua had broken her silence. Since how dare she do that to her mans? Kazuma noticed that ever since she'd pushed her bangs up, Amane really had changed. And maybe she was right. Maybe it was his fault. He'd been the one to give her this newfound confidence after all. and leaning in closer, Amane asked in a whisper if he planned on taking responsibility. And that was the final blow. Rua could only watch as her man got snatched up right before her eyes, then fainted on the spot, while Asano somewhere in the crowd shouts that they should call an ambulance. After Amane's event concluded and June had arrived, she quickly rose to celebrity status, and sure enough, she was really busy every single day, having to balance both her new job and school. Even that small incident at the school entrance was enough to get people talking about her. As for Kazuma, well, he's the mysterious loner who's somehow always surrounded by both Rua and Amane. At least, that's how everyone else sees him. But to him, that's fine, since he's finally living out his peaceful days. When suddenly, a few classmates' laughter nearby had caught his attention, as Asano tries to shoot his shot at Aya, claiming that if he could only date her, then he'd be ready to risk it all. But she's not buying it, since he's probably just saying that because he got rejected by Rua. And wasn't he saying a few months ago just how much he was in love with Amane? To her, he's too desperate to get a girlfriend, and at this rate, no one's gonna want him if he keeps it up. And while everyone teases him for being an open book, he claims that he actually really did mean it. After all, Aya's really pretty, a fashion leader, a top student, and the star of the dance club. So of course he'd actually want to date her. But all she did was laugh right to his face, as that's clearly a pickup line that he just used. Besides, she already has a boyfriend, and Asano damn near died from yet another rejection. It seems as if this was something everyone else knew though, as Aya's definitely the type of girl who isn't interested in guys who don't have a car or money. And our brother Asano's out here starving, like he needs this girl, claiming that he too has money, so he'd definitely be able to treat her to some tea. And that alone almost had her laughing in his face again, asking if he knew what it was she held in her hand. It was a new purse that had just been released this month, and her boyfriend had bought it for her without even asking for the price. So, if Asano had any plans to take his place, then he'd need to be able to at least buy tea 1,000 times. And that's when he noticed she was way out his budget, and finally decided to let it go, as she's all about her money and, well, looks too, of course. All while Kazuma sits across from them. They're known as the elite group, made up of top performing students, but Aya was specifically known for her beauty and fame, and she clearly has no problem shouting at the top of her lungs too. But Kazuma couldn't help but notice that Aya just happened to be sitting on a desk that had belonged to someone else, and while taking a closer look, he noticed the young woman holding a book he had recently returned to the hidden library, and figured she must have borrowed it. Just that thought alone was able to make him really happy, as he's glad that it didn't stay there buried in dust forever. He knows it's a good book, and he could tell she really wanted to sit quickly to read it. And while taking a moment, Kazuma decided to approach Aya and mentioned that that wasn't a place to be sitting, and asked her to move. And at first her eyes widened, but had quickly turned into frustration, because how dare some loser try to act all buddy-buddy with her, mentioning how he was so annoying. But Kazuma don't give a damn. The bell was about to ring, so she should just go back to her seat. But she gets even louder, since there's still time. Plus, it's none of his business anyway. All while Kazuma thinks how stubborn she was, remembering her from when he had gone out for karaoke in chapter 1. She had given him a cold look back then as well, and it had him thinking that maybe Aya actually hates him. But whether she hates him or not, he has no other choice. And while scooping her up in his arms, he gently lifts her off the table, all while everyone stood there watching. And not before long, her whole face had turned red. But Kazuma was unfazed, calling out to the young lady who needed her desk, since now would be the best time to make a move. and as she rushes in to clean this girl's dusty ass cheeks off her desk, she thanks him, and with his objective completed, he gently lowers her feet to the ground. She stood there with her head tilted down, silent, until suddenly she snapped. A flurry of embarrassment and frustration flared across her face as she warns him not to mess with her, while also curiously wondering what was he trying to accomplish just now, and decided to lay it on him, because how dare he do something like that to her. But right as she was about to continue, Rua had stepped into the room, cheerful and wishing everyone a good morning, and in an instant, the place had gone silent, as if the one in charge had finally showed up. And while she approached Aya from behind, she whispers in her ear, asking what had happened, and if by any chance Kazuma had done something to her. And not wanting to mess with the psychotic woman who would clearly do anything for her mans, Aya quietly mentions that it was nothing. But Kazuma had to speak up, because how many times did he have to tell her that he doesn't belong to her, but rather that they're just strangers now? Shocked, Rua tilts her head down, asking why. Why does he keep saying such cruel things to her? As back then too, he kept siding with that garbage ass voice actress, even though she was clearly thinking of him the whole time. But for the last time he mentioned that he only sides with those who work hard, and not with some lazy arrogant pig like herself, and walked right back over to his seat. And since he had cut ties with Rua, Kazuma could finally do the things he wanted to do as an ordinary high school student. And the first thing he thought about was finding his first part-time job. But he seems to be unsure of what jobs would even suit him. There is this new maid and butler cafe that has a pretty nice pay. And now that he thinks about it, back when he was in middle school, he was forced to live in Rua's family mansion, having to learn how to clean and serve in preparation for having him serve their family. Sure, his new job might be a bit further than he'd like, but if it's an actual cafe, then maybe he'd be able to put his experience to the test. And while inside the cafe, it didn't take long for him to be hired on the spot, and apparently he'll be starting next week. As Kazuma sat there, he was surprised it was that easy, but his employer mentions how his gesture had seemed polite, so she's absolutely thrilled he was able to come by. Sure, their space is not all that big, and as a result of that, there's usually only 2 people serving at the front, while she's normally in the kitchen. But he actually shouldn't worry, because there's actually a very dependable senior who he can rely on. Plus, they're very easy to work with. And it's while he made his way to the back to meet his dependable senior, he hopes that they'd at least be nice. And right as he opened the door, introducing himself, the young lady in front of him couldn't believe it, dropping her broom in the process, as she's unable to believe that their new part-time worker is actually Kazuma. All while someplace else, Rua thinks back to what Kazuma had said, and while pasting images of them on the wall, she mentions that she finally understands it now, that he's been testing her love this whole time, as from here on out, she'll do her best. Her furious eyes darted in his direction as she calls out to him. She warns him not to tell anyone that she's doing this kind of job, wondering why of all people it had to be Kazuma. After all, she'll never acknowledge him as her junior. But while Kazuma averts his gaze and looks elsewhere, she calls out to him yet again, wanting to know if her secret would be safe with him. But desperate, she asked why he was so quiet, and when she couldn't take it anymore, she shouted that she knew working hard while dressed as a maid was a bit weird, and if he wanted to, he could just laugh already. But confused, Kazuma asked why, since there's nothing funny about a person working hard. And while she blushed uncontrollably, she exclaims that someone like her didn't actually do much, and she only really took the job because the pay was good. But from the looks of it, Kazuma noticed her cleaning was actually pretty thorough, as both the glasses behind the chandelier and underneath the chairs and tables were done really well. Not to mention the hard to see areas were actually pretty spotless. But yet again, she claimed that she didn't do it, that maybe some little kid did it instead. But if that was the case, then why is it that her hands look the way they do? Both her hands and knees are a bit dirty, and Kazuma wondered if maybe she had been kneeling down to wipe the stains on the floor with a cloth, and then shortly after went over it with a mop afterwards. How it was some amazing work she had done, and while she stared at him, she began to blush yet again, all while she grit her teeth, and shortly after shouted that he should just shut up already, and instructs him to go on and change his clothes before they open the cafe, since there's a lot she has to teach him before then. And as Kazuma stood there with a hopeful smile, he reassures her that he'll do his best. It wasn't long after that the cafe was now open, and as Aya made her rounds, she began taking orders for meals, and shortly after approached the family apologizing, as it seems they were a bit packed for the day, and recommends that they take a look at the menu while she tries to sort out their seating arrangements, and hands them back their change with a warm and welcoming smile. Surprisingly, Aya's completely different from how she is at school. It also doesn't look as though she's putting up an act, but it looks as though she's actually happier here than she would be at school. But that's enough of assessing Aya, since Kazuma also needs to make sure he doesn't get in her way at all today. As the evening came and things began settling down at the cafe, Aya lies slumped over their counter, feeling exhausted. Curious, Kazuma asked if there were always this many customers during lunchtime, and apparently that seems to be the case, but it always calms down during the evenings and onward. And it's then that he wanted to ask if she was actually a part of the dance club, and how rough it must be for her to juggle work and school. But springing up from the counter, she confesses with a smile that she wouldn't mess up, since she's a genius after all. But now it was her turn to ask a question. She wondered if maybe this was his first part-time job, although she wasn't able to tell because of how quickly he was moving. But all Kazuma really cares about is not getting in her way, but she insists that he hadn't at all. But in fact, she should actually be thanking him. But then quickly came to her senses and decided to put everything on hold, since she had been getting close with her enemy. But Kazuma doesn't even know why they're beefing, and it's simply because he cut ties with Rua, so it should have been obvious. And although that might be true, as for Aya and her friends, he actually holds no grudge against them. But what about that time he suddenly got angry during karaoke? How it must have been because he hated all her friends and herself as well. But again, he confessed that he didn't, and figured that it must have been because of that pig Rua why she still thinks that way. And when she finally realized it, she wanted to clarify if this pig he spoke of would be Rua. And it's true she used to follow her orders, but before she could even finish her thought, it didn't seem to matter to Kazuma anymore, since all that matters now was that he thought of her differently, genuinely respecting her. She's efficient and careful with her work, and that's why from now on, he'd like if she could teach him. And as she stood there in silence, she finally agreed to help him, as from this moment on, she would give her best, so he had better be ready. Grateful, he bowed before her, though a lingering question pressed on her mind about the man they had seen earlier. Apparently, during the visit of their last male customer, Kazuma had decided to step in. He mentions wanting to ensure the customers had a great experience, but she already saw through his lies. She had been watching him the entire day, so she knows it's not like him to interfere with her work. And as he stood there, he thought for a while. He asked if she had realized that very same customer following her around. He was also a pickpocket who kept putting his hands in his pocket unnaturally, not to mention those suspicious eyes of his. And it seems Aya also had a strange feeling about this guy. But if that was the case, but Kazuma asked why didn't she kick him out, as where did all that toughness she had at school go? And as she stood there trying to get her words out, she mentions that it's because he's a customer, so she couldn't possibly say that, but he thinks she's taking it way too seriously, and if she ever saw him again, she should let him know so he could take care of it. She whispers a heartfelt thank you under her breath, and as she came a little closer to him, she noticed how kind he was, but was interrupted when another customer had entered the store. And as Aya turns to welcome them, it was none other than Amane, cheerfully entering while calling out to Kazuma. She had heard he was working part-time and wanted to stop by, but then Amane noticed something, since that person standing beside Kazuma looks really familiar, almost as if she had seen them somewhere before. And Kazuma picked up immediately. Aya had completely frozen up, as it seems she really doesn't want other people from school finding about her job, and mentions that it's probably just Amane's imagination. Also, he asked if Aya didn't have something she wanted to do around the back, and she gladly took that excuse to get up out of there. As time went on, Kazuma places a cream soda down and apologizes for the wait, while Amane cheerfully thanks him for her order. She couldn't help but notice how beautiful the restaurant was. She had some important work to do today, and since she gets all her motivation from Kazuma, she asked her manager for some extra time. Like, sure, the cream soda's delicious, but she really just wanted to see her mans in a tuxedo. And with another bite, she couldn't help but mention how happy she was in the moment. And that's really all that Kazuma needed to hear. It seems as if her voice acting work had been going well, and apparently, the 3 main voice actors had also been decided. But speaking of which, Amane asked if Rua had stopped by the cafe yet, but Kazuma actually hasn't told anyone about his new job. But still, it all just feels suspicious. Rua had been silent for about 2 weeks now, and it's definitely rare for such a famous person as herself to go on such a long break. Maybe she's actually plotting something, and Amane finds it all strange. Regardless, she warns Kazuma to please be careful, and shortly after noticed how late it had gotten. And as she stood to her feet, she ran over to Kazuma, leaping into his arms, hugging him tightly. And as he called out to her, she mentions being fully recharged and filled with energy, and made her way over towards the exit, thanking him for the meal. And it seems Amane had truly been shining brightly, breaking free of guilt and her old workplace. And it all just reminds her of that day he was able to take himself back. But just like Amane said, if Rua were to try something again, and if anything were to happen, he'd be ready. But hiding somewhere around the back while peeking in, Aya can't help but wonder what's going on. She asked herself what kind of relationship they could have, and that Minato Amane girl from her school, well, she's supposed to be a voice actress. Come to think of it, Aya does remember hearing some rumors that she was close friends with Kazuma, but she just hadn't believed it. But not only that, but they do really look good together, and she's sure Kazuma just doesn't think about her. As she sat there sad and alone on the floor, it seems like Kazuma really is a good guy after all. But now streaming on YouTube, Rua welcomes everyone for joining. Apparently, a close friend of hers told her recently that the most important thing is to try your best. She wanted to think about it seriously, so she reflected on it a lot, and then asked herself what she could possibly do to help the people around her. And that's when she realized she should be using her strength to speak up for others. So she told her grandfather about this great idea of hers, and he decided to lend a hand. And since her grandpa is now on board, starting tomorrow, she'll be going on a 2-week trip with him. But not only that, but she'll also be trying her best to be a good granddaughter, and decided that they should all work really hard together, and says her goodbyes by logging off for the day. Yo, it's your boy Noodles, and I appreciate y'all as always for messing with the videos. I know I've been gone for a whole month, but I got a whole bunch of videos planned for September, so definitely look forward to that. I've also been thinking about getting a video editor to help out with making these videos, but I'll talk to you guys more about that on a later video. But for now, if you want more peak content, then check out this video right here. And if there's a part 7 out for this series, then it should also be right here.